Okay, hello everyone. We started. It's us. We're doing it now at whatever this time period is. I am Shane Smith. Welcome to this podcast that probably has a name. And joining me, introduce yourselves, gentlemen, please.
I'm Deacon Max.
I just wanted to see who would go faster.
I defer to my co-host.
I'm generally faster,
Kinder, more humble.
This guy,
faster,
agile, flexible.
Agile, flexible. We all have our powers.
I'm Deacon Joseph Rolwing. We host a podcast called Logos Podcast, and we're going to be Catholic priests in like 4 months. That's is what they tell us. So
there's a lot of people watching you right now who have no idea. Is that my phone? Have no idea. This is incredible. I start my podcast and then my phone starts going off. Is that real? Oh, it's because I was It's because I was texting Father Weta. Who
you're getting our dinner plans together.
Yeah. Dinner
plans.
It's
important. Dinner plans. You know how it is. We got to eat.
Yeah, dude, we have to eat. So a lot of people watching are like, wait, what's a deacon?
Yeah, sometimes.
Well, see, here's the thing. Most people, I think, actually are really intrigued into what a deacon is. Like Googling, like, yo, what's like a Catholic deacon?
Can I tell you that
I Googled it when
when I first became Catholic, I was like, I should be a priest or a religious. I'll be a brother or a priest, whatever. And I started to discern this, and I was like, I'm in. This is awesome. I could do this. And then I fell in love with a woman. God has other plans for us, whatever. But then I was like, I could still be a deacon. And I've told friends of mine who were priests, like, oh, dude, what if I became a deacon? And every friend I have who's a priest is like, boo, don't do that.
Second class.
Be regular. You're just creating more paperwork for me.
Okay. Let me just explain that a little bit because okay, so a deacon is the word just means servant. It comes from the Greek diakonoi. Sorry, I didn't have
just a casual Greek.
I didn't have to. I don't speak Greek, but I know that it comes from that word. So ultimately, a deacon is just a servant. If you are on your way to becoming a priest, you become what is usually called a transitional deacon. So you're transitioning from being like a lay person to being a priest. And before you become a leader of a community, you want to be a servant of that community first.
100%.
So that's kind of what it's about.
And then there's two different types of diaconates.
That's right.
So there's a transitional diaconate, which is what we're doing. We're on our way to the priesthood. And then there's a permanent diaconate, right?
Should we be looking at you or should we be looking at the camera?
Wherever you want.
All right.
So there's a permanent diaconate, which is a whole different office, you know?
That's so funny to just do. Okay, so what's the permanent?
So permanent deacons are what you in theory could be still is somebody, usually men who are like a little later in life and maybe they're married and they have a family.
Yeah.
And they feel called to serve the church in a particular way. And so they are they become ordained deacons. So it's a real sacrament. It's part of like holy orders. The reason your priests probably your priest friends probably make those comments to you is that sometimes we can, like, men who are getting really into their faith and want to get like super involved are like, oh, I'll just become a deacon. Like that's what you do.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's like not actually what you're being called to. You just think it's the logical next step. And so priests, like I like to encourage people to like, all right, maybe that's what you're being called to. Maybe God's inviting you to be a deacon.
Yeah.
Or maybe you should be looking down other avenues too.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Being a deacon looks interesting to me because obviously you can't be, I'm in the Roman Rite, and I can't be a priest unless I take a vow of chastity, celibacy. Yeah. Chastity is a thing I'm already doing.
Yeah.
Celibacy. Well, yeah. I mean,
trying.
We're all
trying.
Everyone's trying. It is one of the harder parts of being a Catholic in our modern era. That's the thing people ask. When people are non-judgmental and secular and they're kind of like, you converted, and they have like just curiosity questions. The big one is like, so you don't watch like pornography, you're not trying to have sex, like how did you even live? Yeah. And you're like, how sad is it that you're to the point that like you can't even imagine life without these as part of your daily practice?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just spend time with women because I love them as human beings and people.
I remember when I entered seminary, I literally had a buddy of mine tell me, he's like, oh, like a priest, right? He's a Protestant friend of mine. He's like, a priest, like, y'all are celibate, right? He's like, with like all the sexual energy, aren't you just gonna like blow up? It's like, no, people just. Have you ever seen somebody just blow up from all of the sexual tension they have inside? Freud has a thing for this. You know?
But we do live in like a hyper-sexualized culture, right?
That's the problem. Is that we've associated it with our daily lives, and the pleasure that comes from like looking at human bodies and seeing people as objects and all this stuff is like, it's second nature. And so you're like, you just open Instagram and it's 9 chicks in a bathing suit. Like there are people who are married, happily married, have no desire to stray, don't think they have problems with lust, and they are absorbing that daily without realizing that like the lust is a part of their daily life.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, they're swimming in it.
Yeah, they're swimming in it. And so when people are like, how could you even do that? It's like, no, once you see it and you try, it changes your life for the better. And then it's so much better. Yeah. And it's sustainable. For sure it's sustainable because there's so much more in life. Like when you really break it down to its smaller parts and you go, okay, let's take lust out of the picture. How do I spend my time? What do I want my day to look like? What do I want my relationships to look like? You realize that it has no place in there. It doesn't fit at all because you don't gain anything. Yeah. If you watch pornography or whatever, every man knows right afterwards, you're like, that I'm a monster.
I feel empty.
People make jokes about it all the time.
Yeah. Non-religious people make jokes about it.
Yeah.
The emptiness in your soul. So like, yeah, man, that has no place in your everyday practice. And once you take it out, it like over time you go, oh,
yeah.
I'm playing. Even at the most basic secular level, you're just playing more Call of Duty, and that's a better lifestyle than what you were doing before. You know, I have more time for the gym. I have time, and then as you like declutter your life from lust, you begin to be like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing women differently.
Yeah, and this is like part of the thing of like, right? So like submitting yourself to sexual lust is like becoming more animalistic. So you're like, there's like in Devontae
Wilders. Yeah.
Devontae's comedy said, hey, yo, bro, listen. Divine comedy.
Yo, the devil is crazy for real.
Hey, yo, don't mess with that, bro. You know what I'm saying? Murder was a case.
Murder was the case.
In Divine Comedy, Dante paints these creatures in hell as looking down, right? Unable to look up. Because that's something that human beings can do uniquely. We can look up, right? Mm-hmm. We can look up towards heaven. And this is one of the things that like sin does for us. It locks us downward and closes our vision inward. But then when, like you're talking about, like it turns out when we move away from those animalistic tendencies, we're able to experience life more because you don't have to have sex all the time. Like you don't have to do that. You don't have to succumb to the nearest impulse. You can actually live freely, more rationally.
Yeah, but people are like, because of this culture in which we live, people associate happiness with immediate gratification, sexual pleasure specifically, right? And so like you're right, like you've experienced this probably, you know, becoming Christian recently, like people being shocked about it.
Oh yeah.
Whenever I'm getting my hair cut, it's like, what do you do? It's like, I'm a Catholic, I'm going to be a Catholic priest. Like, oh, you can't get married or have sex. It's like it is. It's a radical thing.
Yeah.
A lot of, because they can't conceive of like happiness.
Also marriage doesn't equate sex.
Well, that's the thing that like, come on, guys. Marriage is about a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a thing that it didn't occur to me. So when I was a secular person, I was like, why would anyone get married? You're going to be tired of each other.
Right.
You're going to like get sick of each other, which you will. You will 100,000,000% you will. But the point is that you're like making a commitment and that it's bigger than both of you. And it's about what you're building. And it's about love that transcends how you feel.
Yes.
And like, so everyone's obsessed with how you feel because everyone's obsessed with what is natural and not what is rational. And so like the natural, that's why everyone like holistic medicine, crystals, and like, oh, but your obsession with pleasure is natural. People are built for it. But if we do everything that feels natural, we'll literally be animals. We'll be beasts. You know what's not natural? Heating and air conditioning. You know what's not natural? Cars, planes, buildings, cement, steel,
laptops,
medicine, Yeah, come on, everyone.
No, that's a great point.
We are beyond the natural. We are rational beings, gifted intellects. And now, why would you be gifted it? what is it for? Those are the questions you should be asking yourself, not the like, what's natural? I should just do whatever feels right.
Right.
Like, what?
That's what a child does, right? Like when a child hasn't like grown in virtue yet, they're still governed by these kind of elemental desires, and they have to, like, a good parent should be like, no, you're not going to eat that entire chocolate cake because you'll get sick.
Yeah.
Right? You have to, like,
don't
learn how to use self-control.
Don't smash your little brother in the face with a train because you didn't get what you wanted.
Yeah. And this is going back to the question. It's like, well, it's natural for a man to want to have sex with a woman, for example. So, like, you shouldn't become a priest because it is a natural thing to want to enter into conjugal union with somebody. But in a similar argument, is that, like, well, you should be having sex with as many women as you want because it's a natural thing. It's like, no, that's not. We're misunderstanding what we're talking about when we in nature.
Exactly.
Right?
And you know what's funny is, as we've gone down this path in secular life, we do keep upping the ante. Well, I'm attracted to this person, so it's natural. Well, I'm attracted to all these people, so it's natural. And you're, like, moving away from polyamory. You're moving into polygamy. You're moving into, like, hypergamy, which is like, and if you want what's natural, that's the most natural. That's one rich guy, and he marries all 30 of the women in your village, and you just kind of languish in obscurity until you die. Like, that is what will happen. And that's what does happen in cultures where they pursue that. And it's like, come on, everyone. So what do we want for ourselves?
Right. And the thing is with, like, people have this idea, like, okay, so they think that life is about immediate gratification, sexual pleasure, all these things. That's how you become happy. They see Christians, Catholic priests saying no to those things in certain respects, and they're like, oh, you must think, like, sex and these things are bad or evil or, like, dirty or
which
something.
is true. We hate it. We think it's terrible.
No, I think, like, Christians have like a higher view and appreciation for the gift of sexuality than the secular world does, because they're just, like, swimming in it, doing it mindlessly. We're actually like, this is a beautiful, sacred thing that needs to be, like, protected and used in the right context.
Can I hit you with a JP2 quote that changed my life?
Please.
Before I was even going to be Catholic.
Wait, let me think about it.
I read this quote online.
I'm cool.
I thought you were going to say the quote. I see what you're doing. That's a pretty good bit. When I decided pornography was bad, it was immoral before I was Christian.
Yeah.
That was one of the first things that changed my life. It's like, this is bad. I'm going to stop participating in this at all. I'm going to try, you know? And of course, it's a beast to get over, especially when you're our age. Like, if you start watching when you're a kid, it's like overcoming that beast is a lifelong journey. But I was like, I got to stop. I saw a JP2 quote, St. Pope John Paul II. He's great. One of my favorite guys, Theology of the Body. If you're a secular person, you should even read it. It's crazy.
For sure.
He said the problem with pornography isn't that it shows too much, it's that it doesn't show enough.
That's right.
In, like, you're like, whoa, hold up.
And
crushed it. What a perfect he summarized all of it.
Yeah.
Boom, one sentence, that's the whole problem.
That's
it's hard
because like those depictions of pornography are a twisted mockery of what love is, and a very, very limited portion of what true love does or can include in a vocation like marriage. Like sexual intimacy is part of that, but that's only a very even there is only one part of a larger picture of love when it's even rightly visioned.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it reduces a person to an object to be used rather than a human being to be loved. And then what happens with pornography is, like, so he's saying it doesn't show enough. Like, I'm not seeing the whole person. All I'm seeing is pixels on a screen when I'm watching porn.
Exactly, which is another thing entirely.
Another, like, separation from reality. But, like, even like I'm just viewing this person as an object for my own use. And then what the tragedy of pornography is, like, I'm doing that over and over and over again, right? Maybe, like, for hours a day. And then, so what I'm doing, and I think, like, oh, I'm just in my room, like, I'm not hurting anyone. Yeah. Like, I'm just, like, this is totally natural, normal, fine. But what I'm doing is I'm training myself to treat human beings as objects for my use. And then when I go into my human relationships, I'm, like, operating in that mode. Right. And it's very difficult to love or be selfless and, like, serve others.
And not only that, you are actually affecting others.
Yeah,
it's part of the great lie of pornography. I mean, in addition to what you're saying, Deacon Joseph, here is that, like, you something like you enable a structure of sin to continue. There is like sexual trafficking that's happening behind these things that we're unaware of.
Yeah,
Maybe on a professional level. Yeah, these may be paid actresses or actors in this thing, but they themselves have succumbed to a particular structure and way of life that we're enabling in our watching of these things. Even though we're not hurting anybody, that's not the way that human interactions work. Any human interaction, even if it's through a screen, affects necessarily somebody else.
Right.
At all times. That's somebody's sister, for example. That's somebody's cousin that you're watching on the other side. Or child.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, no, you're not just doing this in your lonesome by yourself in the room as if this doesn't actually impact or never did impact anybody. It does have a connection to somebody.
It's a unique, unrepeatable human being with hopes and dreams, who
Yeah.
would like to be loved, who wants relationships, who wants to be seen,
Deserves it.
who need and they need all the things you need, and they're lonely in the ways you're alone. And it, like, you just don't consider that, obviously, because the more we can reduce that, the better, in order to just create profit. And then it's like, you just can't be involved in it. It's a whole crazy thing. The amount of people, I used to be deeply involved just in it in general. I went to like the porn awards as a comedian to like interview people and make jokes and give a speech. And like, it's funny. We're all here having a good time. As I converted, the amount of friends I had who were involved in the industry who had removed themselves were like, it's evil and I want to speak out, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid for how I'll be treated. I'm afraid for the backlash. I'm afraid because maybe they have like a social media career where they don't do that anymore, but they'll lose their fans. It'll ruin their life, and they're so scared. But the validation of the amount of people who come out of it and speak against it, it's like, come on, everybody. What are we doing?
I know.
Evidence is piling up. But
and like scientific secular evidence too, right? Like people who are, addicted to this and then like struggling with ED, like they can't,
exactly.
like all
and
these
then
things
affecting your relationship in the future.
Yeah.
And then that's my thing. I remember how radical it was when my friends who were who lived here in Utah were like, I can't watch that, it's cheating on my wife. And then my secular friends were like, that's not cheating. And like, it was a huge debate. And it's like, yo, dog, it for sure is. Like, 1,000,000% is. I don't know what is cheating to you. Like, just because she's not there. So then can you video call someone and talk to them? Oh, but then if you have a relationship with them, it's bad. So like, if you see them as a human being, that's negative, but that's not a person on the other side of the screen. Because I'll promise you, both those women, either way, are human beings with hopes and dreams. And like, what desires and wants, and so either way it's pretty bad, buddy.
I also say, like, it's interesting too, because I think one of the things that social media does, like, on top of making things widely accessible, it also does come with the temptation of treating those behind the screen as if they're not real persons. I mean, somebody comments on our stuff, we have comments coming in, by the millions.
Yo, that's
the millions.
That's something I wanted to ask you guys about. I just did your podcast.
That's right.
We talked about the negativity I received as I converted. I literally thought I ended my own career, and I absorbed an amount of hate that was like unreal. People attacking me, people messaging my mother, people threatening to do all sorts of stuff, visit my home, attack me physically, mentally, friends betraying me, all just this cascade of negativity and horrible experiences. And since then, I get negative stuff on my page once in a while. I mean, I literally was fielding a comment recently. When we were eating, I like looked at my phone and someone was being rude in my comments. How, as people who are becoming priests, who have to interact in the world, like, what kind of negativity do you absorb? Do you think in real life have people been mostly just curious about you and like kind, but online, how different is it?
I think that this is a question I was talking about with the older priests in my diocese. We talked about like the depictions of the priesthood, and admittedly in history, the idea of the priesthood has changed in the way that the priesthood is seen. Arguably, recently in American history, the priesthood is not a very lucrative position, let's say.
No,
example, right?
There was what was his name? He's like a liberal guy who has a TV show that's really popular. He did a movie about atheism, but he was doing some theory about how at one point being a priest was a really well respected job in the community and stuff, and it was kind of ruined over time.
And I think it's definitely
unfortunately by the example of some priests who've done terrible things.
And exactly. So some of these, I guess what I was trying to say, some of these criticisms are legitimate, right?
Yeah.
So on the one hand, there's that, but then because we live in a world that is consumed by these criticisms, and it's so easy to hear nothing but the criticisms, we can think, well, that means everybody hates priests. right? Especially as a young clergyman. It's like, you know, and then I go to this older priest. I'm like, Father, like, is it really that bad out there? Because we keep being told it's a mess.
Yeah.
Right. But my experience, which is similar to his experience, is that these media paintings of what the priesthood is, or how much people hate the priesthood, is not necessarily match up with what actually happens in real life.
Yeah.
Most of the people that I've encountered, as you pointed out, kind of just curious as to, they find it odd. We may be at the haircut, we may be at the grocery store with our clerics on, we may be talking to our friends at the bar or whatever, and people are like, oh, or looking at us weird, like, oh, that's cool. And they may be thinking things, and I'm not oblivious to that, right?
Yeah.
But the reality of like what social media and others paint the priesthood to be is not necessarily. I've actually met a lot of very good people.
Yeah.
People that have been very supportive. On the worst end of it has been the curiosity or kind of like sarcastic kind of approach.
Yeah.
Like one time I had this person come up to me at a restaurant and ask me to bless their chicken wings as they were like walking by, and it was kind of mean because the guy that they were sending had Down syndrome, who's a waiter working there. Clearly the cooks and the stuff back there were sending him to me to like because he really wanted me to bless them. They thought it was hilarious, and I looked at them and I clearly was disappointed with them. I blessed the chicken wings and the guy.
I was just gonna say, you gotta bless him. I bet he'd be pumped on it.
Exactly, he was, and it was. But that's like the worst kind of thing that I've personally experienced.
Yeah, I mean, in person, generally my experience has been overwhelmingly positive. I think that I actually, like, we're in the clerics. You do get weird looks every once in a while, but like overall, like, I think people have a hunger for God.
Yeah,
even if they don't know it, and so like. And many people live in a world where like God isn't even like a thought in their mind, just because it's becoming such a secular culture. And so I think a lot of people, when they see like the collar, they're like reminded of God for a minute, and it's kind of like a breath of fresh air, and it sparks some curiosity. Now on our podcast, so we get some nasty comments.
We do sometimes, and sometimes I've had to. I try to keep them as raw and authentic as possible. But typically, if like somebody put something ugly about Deacon Joseph or myself, I'll just go on there and cuss them out.
Yeah,
shut them down real quick.
I was like, oh yeah, you son of a whatever. No, typically we either don't reply, don't interact, because as we talked about in our podcast, it's like it's a moment of anger, it's a moment of rage.
Right.
I don't want to catch them at their worst. It's not fair to them. Yeah. It's not fair to us to try to recover. And sometimes Deacon Joseph will have to stop me. I'm like, yo, bro, I want to freaking smoke this nerd.
Dude, I relate to that. And honestly, my fiance is the one nowadays who's like, what are you wasting your time?
I know.
Right.
Because I'm like, I'm going to dunk on this person. I'm like looking up verses or like, you know, some weird that you're always like, oh, I'm on the hunt. She's like, what are you doing? Because I'm typing furiously. And she's like, stop.
You look like an animal over there. Like behind your laptop.
I would say by far, though, it's like we'll get every once in a while like people who clearly just like hate Christianity, but the vast majority of the people who leave like harsh comments are like Protestant people who think that Catholicism is evil from the devil, and then it's like, and you do want to like maybe respond again to a theological debate, but that's
not fruitful.
Not the forum.
It's not fruitful. I've found the most fruitful thing to do with the Protestants, and they're the people who are like the most specifically in that way, is to just be like, hey, I wish you all the best, I love you, I hope things work out for you, you know, and like to just really kill them with kindness. And I can't tell you how many people who've come back around a month later like, I'm sorry. I will say that I've done a few times where I've been like, hey, do you really feel Christ-like saying this to me right now? And I'll kind of shame them in a way, like a mom would.
I think they kind of need to get in trouble because it's rude. It's not the Christian way.
And I am kind of being a little bit cheeky. I'm not being rude, but I am being like, I'm literally saying I'm disappointed in you.
Right.
And sometimes that gets people, and they're like, you know what? Like, really? You know, it really does. I've shamed people into being like, ooh, you're right. Or I'll tell them I'm disappointed and they'll just block me. And I'm like, I know that that's heavy on your heart, and I really hope you sit with that, and that you move. Next time you're going to do that, you think to yourself, oh, dude, I was disappointed that one time and it really got me.
Dude, I also say this. One of the funny things about social media is that on the positive side, you have a whole army of followers. Yeah. So sometimes they'll go on there and they'll
true.
Dude, yeah, I was going to say.
You're like watching, like, yo, just what I'm talking about. You're saying exactly what I would say, bro. Even better. You know?
Yeah.
Boy, get him.
It does happen.
Yeah, now that I have a way more Catholic fans. Like I had a guy recently in my comment saying something, and there were like 3 dudes in my comments being like, line 6 of the whatever in the Summa, like laying him out, and I was like, yo, this guy is going nuts. He's reading. Yeah, that's always fun.
But it is also funny because like I always think about, like how angry you have to be to sit for like hours debating. I mean, sometimes we'll go on there in the same conversation. I'm almost like, hey, bro, let it go.
Yeah.
Just let it go.
Although it's funny, like you'll hear Bishop Barron and he'll talk about like when he was like early on in his evangelization ministry online, he would block out time to like get on like Reddit and like respond to people.
Yeah.
Like, debate people.
I've seen some of his response are memes now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's one where someone is like has this big theological argument with him, and at the end they're like, and so you believe that your religion is correct and all the others are wrong, and instead of a big long theological explanation, he just wrote yes. and then so the meme is that right there, and then it's him, that photo of him looking ripped.
Jacked. Bicep Barron.
Yeah, bicep Barron on the thing, and that right there, I'm like, yo, that's my guy.
He wins everything, dude. He wins all of the things.
And now that's my answer. Anytime someone asks me, they're like, so you think you're whatever you're, and I'm like, yes, I do.
Yeah, and then you show them off your biceps.
And then I hit him with the
which I think could be powerful for people because we live in a world where people are so like afraid to take a stance and like have real convictions.
Yes.
That when people hear you being like, oh, you really believe like what you're saying and you think it's right, it can be like a source of, intrigue for people.
It really is. I think that the power from this is a comedy thing, and I was taught by a friend of mine, Mac Arthur, who is a former partner. He's great. I love him. I wish him all the best. He is a professional troll. He's the next level of he's from Chile. He's a wild man, South American, so he's very mean.
Yeah, just a quick.
Why'd
question.
you point?
I pointed to him because I was saying he's South American and mean. You guys love to roast. You're in it. You love Goku and you love to roast people. I know what you're up to over there. And so
Goku,
dude, come on. Everyone in South America loves Goku. Mexico down. You guys are in it. And so no, he's great. But people would accuse him of things to try to be mean to him, or like he would troll and they'd be like, you're a racist, or they'll just accuse him of the worst thing they'd think of to shut him down. And he would just be like, yes. And he would just agree with that, and he would sort of like own it in a certain way that would shut them down immediately. And like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to own things that I'm not. But
right.
I do take that lesson from that, and I will own things that I am, even if I'm scared. And so when people are like, oh, you're Catholic, so you think yours is the best way and that this is the correct one and everyone else is wrong? Yes, I do. Like, that's why I'm here. That's what I'm up to. And there is a ton of power in that.
Because
people hear that.
There's no reason you shouldn't believe anything unless you think it's true. You know?
Well, people want universalism is the poison of our modern culture.
All right,
every single person wants everything to be valid.
Yep.
No, it's all valid. It's all good. It's like
tolerance is a high virtue.
Yeah. Tolerance is a high virtue, but like tolerance in the not real tolerance.
No, exactly.
Planet Fitness tolerance. I'll explain.
Yes.
Planet Fitness has the sign. There's a jack dude. He's all ripped and he looks awesome. He looks like Sam Sulek. He's cool. And he's got the freaking tank top on, right? Oh. And he's jacked. And then Planet Fitness sees this awesome guy and they go, no awesome guys allowed in here. And they draw a circle around him and a line through it. And they say, not welcome. Like literally there's a sign that says not welcome and it's him. And then right next to it, there's a thing that's like Planet Fitness, a place for everyone. Because Planet Fitness's whole thing is acceptance, right? But then they have a sign, accept not the exceptional, except not the people who make us feel bad, except not the people who remind us of our mediocrity, except for not the people who make us self-conscious. And so that's a perfect metaphor for our modern culture.
Dude, you're not going to be able to work out at Planet Fitness much longer.
I know. No, my Planet Fitness rocks. They let me do whatever. I'm slamming weights. I'm screaming. And so, no, not really. I'm in there. But
you probably need to stop that. It doesn't matter what gym you're at.
That's our modern culture. Yeah. It's tolerance for everybody. Everyone's okay except for this guy right here. Circle line through him. And it's unironic. It's crazy that people feel that way. Everyone who's obsessed with tolerance, they're the people in my comments being like, I hate you, I wish you, like trying to hurt my feelings, trying to ruin my day, trying to destroy my beliefs, trying to disrespect me. It's like,
and this is what I was telling you earlier. I commented, I said, in our secular kind of liberal mindset, mercy has no place.
yeah,
right. We try to hype and build people up and tell them they're good and great and keep doing what you're doing, live your dream, until they make a mistake, severe or not. Then what do? We want to cancel them. We don't want them. We tolerate them and we build them up and we give them this philosophy of life that we're going to be accepting and all loving and embracing.
Yeah.
Until they make a mistake. And then when they do, we're not willing to accept them back into the fold. We want nothing to do with them. We want them outside of what this is, because mercy has no place here.
Right.
Because they have not lived up to the standard or the idea of the whatever liberal mindset standard is of said person.
Exactly.
And a lot of it's because like, so like in the Christian tradition, we believe that there's something seriously wrong with the world. That, like there's this thing called sin, but the solution, like the thing that's wrong is like within my own heart. And so like, I need to like reform myself and grow in virtue and goodness in order to like address the world's problems.
Right.
But our culture has gotten into this mindset of like, yeah, there's something wrong with the world, but it's not in here. It's somewhere out there. It's like, it's some system or like group of people. And if we want to set things right, it's not like interior reform. It's like, let's alienate whoever is out there, messing everything up.
Yes.
And let's squash them and silence them in any way that we possibly can.
And this is where critical theory becomes very popular on the national scale.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, that's this whole idea of like, where's a problem out there? Let's recognize a problem. Let's diagnose a problem, break it down, and then seek to revolutionize it from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a replacement.
Yeah. I think that it's interesting that people want to crush and discard people. They have nowhere to put them. I went to the Dominican Republic recently, and I did like a beach cleanup. And I went there, and I was going to surf. I didn't end up getting to because there's a storm and everything, but we did a beach cleanup. Anytime I've surfed outside of the country, I try to like do something like that. So we all go to do this beach cleanup. I think we're just going to be walking along this beach, picking up some glass, maybe a Capri Sun thing. It was like a garbage dump.
Oh my gosh.
Because they were having issues with sanitation and stuff, and they had nowhere to put this, and it rains, and all their garbage. The beach was insane. It was a straight garbage dump, the most beautiful beach I've ever seen. And that's the thing. That's our modern culture, is they're like, you make a mistake and they discard you, but they have nowhere to put you. So they're creating this garbage dump of these discarded people who have nowhere to go, nowhere to be. They're angry, they're frustrated, they're hurt, and they're just like, and it's like, do you want that in your society? Do you want do you want the garbage dump beach?
Because it's coming.
Because it's coming, yeah. Or do you want to be like, I understand you want to clean this person up and put them where they belong? And that's the thing too, like as a comedian, I've been canceled many times for all kinds of things. And people always, the main thing they want to do is they say, I'm trying to protect people or whatever. I want to remove you from the spaces you're in. But what does that mean? So you don't want me to be a comedian, but you know I have to have a job. So do you think that let's say that you think I'm unsafe around women. So you don't want me around women in comedy, but you think the women who work at McDonald's don't deserve safety, so you want to put me down there?
Right.
Like you're not thinking through, you don't care about people. This isn't about justice. This isn't about any real thing, because you're not protecting anybody.
Yeah. Protecting yourself.
Exactly. You're making yourself feel better.
Feelings,
exactly. You're not trying to get to the bottom of anything. You're not trying to like help anyone. And so
but this is back to that point though. It's because they don't stand on anything.
Yeah.
You understand? Like
yeah.
It's related to that.
Yeah. There's no substance that you're really latching onto. Whereas in the Christian faith, we would say, yeah, I actually do believe those truths that we say. I do believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross and rose for me.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I believe that. I believe that
and then,
Pope Francis
that has consequences
exactly.
for reality.
Yeah, that there's a moral life.
Yeah.
That we hold ourselves up to. We believe in that, as opposed to the fleeting morality of secularism.
Yeah.
That says, well, we hold up this value today, that value tomorrow, insofar as it's convenient at best for my power play.
Right. And it's like, I don't know. It's tough because when people have nowhere to go, they get radicalized. And then now we're dealing with like, this group of people who have been discarded, and they're angry and they're lashing out. And then, it's funny because they get associated with us.
Sure. As if like we're the same out group.
Yeah.
I think that's why the Joker movies have been so famous. I was telling, I don't know if y'all have watched the Joker movies. I don't think Deacon Joseph has, but
I saw the first one.
They can be disturbing.
Yeah.
A lot of people from, I can see how they can be disturbing movies. But I think part of the appeal, and I was talking about this with my brother, part of the appeal is because they make you almost sympathize with the Joker.
Yes.
Because you're like, oh, I know how he got to where he got to. I've felt that darkness.
Yeah.
Like I know exactly where I'm at. Right? I'm gonna dance my way into this freaking show and shoot somebody in the head.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah. No, I got this. Like I know what that's about. Like you feel because you think you've been put in that place, because you've been so knocked down that you think he's the hero.
Well, because your soul, your conscience cries out for justice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want justice. Justice is forgiveness and mercy. It's not violence, but the enemy, of course, fills your heart with hate, and then you confuse what justice is.
Correct.
Right. And so like that's why you need the moral foundation. You need the tradition, because discarded people need to know what justice is. If there's no justice in your tradition, then what justice is just revenge.
It's true.
Yeah, justice is just violence.
Yeah.
Justice is just
let me ask you
lashing
something.
out.
I know this is your show, but I have this question.
No, please hit
your
it.
own, like in your own life, of crime before, like being in those dark places. I mean, I'm sure it's not so philosophical while you're living in it, right? I'm sure it's more so like we're just doing this thing,
Right.
We're doing the damn thing, and we're living in this, and this is the way that we live.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So vengeance is basically the norm of operation in those circles. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, no, 1,000,000,000%. It's a principled stance.
Okay.
Like it's like the reaction to the problem. There's no even thought, there's no emotion almost. It just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the moment, like person does X, we have to respond with Y. It's almost mechanical because it's just built into the culture. Like I remember like we had a friend who this is really dark. Are everyone ready?
Ready.
Okay, so I had a friend who was curb stomped. So someone put his head on a curb and stomps on his head, right? And he survived, and he's well today. So it's fine. He in fact laughs about it. But
That's a comedian.
Yeah, right. But at the time, it was this horrible thing, and this happened, and our reaction was not to be there for him in the hospital. It wasn't to whatever. Our reaction was, where are these guys at? Let's figure this
We're gonna
out.
destroy him.
Exactly. And so even the reaction to your friend being hurt is more about what they did and less about what he's feeling. That's a signal to me that I was incorrect, that I was living in a place where I couldn't have been more wrong, because he didn't need there's no justice there.
No.
Like maybe there's a part of him that's like, no, because even the part of him that is glad that they got their comeuppance has more to do with feeling loved by us, that we would do something like that on his behalf, and less to do with what actually happened to the people who hurt him. Do you know what I mean?
I totally
That's
know what you
not
mean.
real justice.
Yeah.
So what he's confusing the need for revenge for the love of our care for him. And like as I like think back to that, I'm like, oh yeah, because that is what it is. It's not that you want revenge. It's that you want your brothers to love you enough to go out on your behalf.
Yeah. And this is like, so not to get all preachy about
No, please.
although that's kind of my job.
I invite two guys who are going to be priests onto my podcast, and people are like, they're really preaching.
Well, like this is part of like the novelty and the radicality of like Christianity is like we live in a world where people are like generally people seem to be at each other's throats, and people have this yearning for justice. And so like an atrocity happens, and yes, I'm going to respond by exacting vengeance, destroying the enemy. And then you get like Jesus, and he, bears the worst suffering imaginable. And then he comes back in glory, and all of these, his best friends who like abandoned him and betrayed him and allowed him to be killed, like the natural response, like the cycle of human history is like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to exact my revenge. I'm going to like destroy them.
Yeah.
But then Jesus shows up to them and he's like, peace be with you.
Yeah.
He says, peace be with you. And here's what's crazy is that seems like mercy is opposed to justice. Like he's not carrying out justice in that moment.
Done something else. Like,
But,
yeah.
But actually, what's beautiful about it is that mercy and justice with God are really the same thing. So like in that act of mercy, that is like his forgiveness and love for the apostles in their recognition of the fact that they abandoned him and betrayed him, that's like a harder punishment for them to bear than it would have been had he come and like exacted revengeance upon them. And so they have to like repent and reform themselves. And that is justice. Like, and it's a justice that actually solves the riddle of this cycle of vengeance for vengeance's sake, and this continuous, revenge isn't going to continue.
I'm also thinking of a beautiful reflection, by the way, but I'm also thinking of Peter, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Peter hears that Christ has to suffer and that he has to die, right? Peter says, no, that's not possible. This can't happen.
Right.
And then what does Christ say? Get behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
That's the moment that he says that.
Yeah.
It's when he can't, as you were talking about, bear what true justice looks like. He's not, because Peter's not animated by love to say that.
Yeah.
Right? But he doesn't recognize that our Lord is animated by love to do that.
Yeah.
This is part of the salvific mystery that's unfolding, again, to set things aright again. It wasn't a mischanneled love. It was a rightly ordered love that Peter forgot to see. And instead of wanting to follow Jesus Christ, he wanted to do revenge on his own terms.
Yeah.
And getting back to like in the context of like tolerance and like intolerance in our culture today, people, I mean, they rightly see that things are messed up in the world and that there are people who are doing terrible things. And so they think, I'm going to like try to eradicate that by destroying the evil that I see. But like, what if the most radical thing you could do for your enemy was love them?
Yeah.
And what if that was actually going to bring about like their conversion and true justice more than like inflicting pain upon them was?
And that's the logic of the gospel.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most important experiences as a Christian I've had, you guys are reminding me that. So I had a year where my hour, I write a new hour or write new jokes all the time, and every tour is like kind of different. And there was a year where I was touring and I was doing jokes about my childhood. And in my childhood, I had a very rough childhood, and my stepfather was abusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about how abusive he was, how horrific it was, and it leads up to like me exacting revenge. And I used to have a line in the joke where I say they say revenge, the best revenge is whatever, and I would be like, the best revenge is just revenge. It's so good. And I would like, basically it was like a pro revenge joke, and there was a turn, and it was supposed to be silly and funny. But as my conversion has deepened, I've like realized like how much pain I was holding over that, and really spent time forgiving my stepfather, who has now passed away. And now I pray for my stepfather regularly. I genuinely hope he's in heaven. I genuinely wish the best for him. Like I've asked him to forgive me for talking bad about him constantly on stage, and like leaving this legacy of him as at his worst.
Yeah.
When there were good things about him, he was a wild guy. I mean, he's a murderer. He was like he did a lot of genuinely, truly, really horrible things, but like also that wasn't him. That wasn't the only, and so as a Christian, forgiving him and then even asking him for forgiveness in a way, or sort of has been freeing in a way that, like, even just being funny about it, the catharsis from that just pales pathetically in comparison to having the realization that, like, I love him and I forgive him.
Yeah.
And that is like the Christian life.
Yeah.
And the thing that people get confused, I think, on is that, that is a radical act of justice and beauty, and it's freeing. But then people think like, oh, okay, so you're all about radical acts of love, so you should just let another culture cut all your heads off. Or something like that. And then you're like, okay, hold on, because there's a difference between pacifism and radical love.
Yes.
Radical love and pacifism technically don't have to go, like, those are two different things. And so
the church is against like strict pacifism.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just think that people want to interpret Christianity as this like easily digestible thing that is like hard and fast rules that make sense to them and give them what they want.
Right.
So they're like, you're a Christian, you're a hippie, you should just let everyone do everything. You should just forgive everyone for everything. Don't judge anyone for anything. Yeah. And you're like, no, Christianity is about love and justice.
And truth,
Love and justice and truth require sometimes for you to stand up for yourself, sometimes for you to say something someone doesn't want to hear, sometimes to remove yourself from someone's presence, sometimes to physically stop someone from doing something or you from doing something. Like, I just think there's so much nuance there that people just like want to lose so that they can get the most digestible 1970s Woodstock message humanly possible.
Well, this is like this, and this is the Jesus Christ of the gospel, right? This is Jesus Christ who is not the one who we want to make, right? Not the one that we just want to follow, not the Patagonia.
Yeah.
Patagonia is beautiful. I've never been myself, and I hear they make great wine in Chile. Or, well, I guess that's in Argentina, but also Chile.
Yeah. Shout out Chile.
I'm thinking of speaking of the gospel, just in that context, the story of the woman caught in adultery.
Yeah.
Right. So here's this like beautifully complex depiction of, I think, all the things we've just been talking about. There's this woman, she's been caught in the act of adultery. The Pharisees, the religious rigorists who have all these, things, and like they have these neat and tidy categories, and they're like trying to follow the rules and be exactly right. They're like, oh,
and they may be following the rules. Like, this is a thing
to a certain degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so like they catch this woman in the act, drag her out. Imagine the shame. She's probably naked, drag her out into the public square. And to see what Jesus is about, they're like, yo, we just caught this woman in the act of adultery. The law says that we should stone her to death. What do you say? And they're trying to get him to like trip up. They're trying to get him to be like contradict what some of the laws in the Old Testament, or like
exactly,
or like say no, and then accuse him of being too lax. And Jesus just like, first of all, he does this weird thing where he bends down and he just starts writing in the dirt, which is a very mysterious thing, and a lot of people hypothesize about what in the world he might have written. But then he just says to the Pharisees, let the one among you who has no sin cast the first stone. Right? And then they're all just like, crap, and they just like,
catch 22, baby.
Yeah,
and so
got him.
They just have to leave. And it's like, Jesus, the response he could have taken was, okay, let's destroy this woman for having sinned, or let's rip the Pharisees to shreds for having like treated the woman in this way. But he just with this like piercing line, like he just wins the whole situation. And then this woman, he says to her, he doesn't say to her, I don't care about what you've been doing. He says, woman, has anyone condemned you? And she says, no one. And he says, then neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more.
Go and sin no more.
Right. So he does call her to conversion. He does like say, don't continue in this lifestyle because it's not good for you. But he doesn't destroy her. He doesn't condemn her.
Yeah.
Nor does he do that to the Pharisees. He calls them to conversion too, right?
Exactly.
So it's really beautiful.
I think people also in that story, they see what he says to her and they're imagining that he's like, you're totally fine. Don't worry about it.
Right.
No, she feels an intense shame.
Yeah.
It's me in the comments being like, I'm disappointed in you. That's it. She's in that space right now. So it's not fun for her.
And God,
it's not good. There probably isn't a lot of relief.
No.
Right.
There's probably a ton of shame and a lot of frustration in the reality that she has to confront the consequences of what she's done in her life now and move on from this.
And God is looking at her as we could probably speculate, probably like naked or half naked.
Yeah.
God, Jesus Christ, the God man, is looking at this woman at her kind of worst.
Yeah.
Right. And still, even then, like, it's not like you're talking about. It's not just this beautiful little event where God's like, "Hey, get up, let's wash you off here and keep doing what you're doing."
Yeah.
It's not like that.
Probably what gives her the capacity to like move forward is the fact that Jesus Christ was looking at her in a way that no one had ever looked at her before. Like, even at her worst, even when she was
treated her
and he probably looked at her with love.
Yeah.
And said, "You're worthy of more than this. So don't go and sin again. Go and sin no more." Mm-hmm. And that can be incredibly powerful for people. Like, it's only love that like can draw us out of ourselves, draw us out of our sins.
Yeah. I remember the first time I confessed.
Oh man.
Like, firstly, it was embarrassing because I had not confessed before. I got baptized. I was like, I'm a superhero now. Yeah. I was baptized, zero sin, big dogs. And like, I had lived a life of wild sin. I had to have confessed. It would.
You want to tell us what the confession is?
Yeah, no. So I get baptized. I'm like, I sin no more. Obviously, like everyone, I fall into mortal sin, and I'm like, well, I gotta confess, and I'm embarrassed, and I feel stupid, and I'm like, I've literally have committed my life to Jesus. I'm Catholic. I'm on podcasts telling people I'm Catholic. I'm publicly doing this, and I'm messing up. I was baptized. What am I doing? So like the shame is unreal, you know, and
Yeah.
I feel stupid and I feel like a fake and I feel like, oh, maybe I've been lying to everyone. Am I even taking this seriously? How did I do that? And that's the thing about sin is sin isn't who you are. So I've always pointed this out to people after I realized it, because sin is not who you are and sin is like this disgusting compulsion. That's why anytime you've ever done something really wrong, when you think back to it, like you're arguing with your girlfriend or something, you go, I don't even know who that was. What was I thinking?
Right.
Because sin darkens the intellect.
Yep.
Who was I? What was I thinking? That's what everyone says.
Sin is a lack of being. That's the
what
theological
was
thing,
I
right?
thinking? Yeah. And so, yeah, it does darken the intellect. So anyway, I go to confess. I think I'm gonna go in the typical Roman booth.
Yeah.
I go, there is a thing, but then the priest is standing right there and he just sees me. So I'm just standing in the door looking at him and he's like, do you want to sit? And I'm like, great. So now I got to confess like face to face with my man.
Yeah.
Anyway, I made my confession and I knew he knew who I was. I knew he knew about my story. I knew everything. And I was like, I'm about to disappoint my priest, all stuff. And I'm literally like so ashamed. And I confessed and he thanked me for my confession, thanked me for my humility, told me everything was going to be okay. And he was strict with me. He was honest about what's going on. Why did you do this? Can you remove yourself from this? Can you do that? You know, and he helps me the way a priest should. But the loving acceptance
Yeah.
and the like with the sternness and everything, as he sent me back into the world, like kind of galvanized to be like, okay, I'm not a monster. I'm not an insane person. People sin, and that doesn't give me permission to be okay with sinning all the time.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't like, it's going to be okay, just come back and confess next time.
Right.
He was like, we can be better and we will be better. I understand who you are. I love you. God loves you. This is a part of the process, but also you've got to be out here doing your thing. And, you know, and so the sacrament of confession and the story of the adulterous woman, they intercede in such a way that you're like watching it unfold in real life. Like that is the sacrament of confession.
That's right.
And think about how polar opposite that is from like the spirit of the world, where people are either like, I don't care what you do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Or I don't like what you're doing, I'm going to try to like cancel you.
Exactly.
The priest is, and Jesus, and then the priest in the person of Jesus is like correcting both of those errors. I'm going to call out, like, I'm going to acknowledge that there's been something wrong here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to acknowledge the truth, but I'm going to love you
That's
in
right.
and through that, in and through your brokenness. Which is so powerful.
Can you imagine how we would have maybe a month of the Catholic Church left if we behaved like the world? If I had gone into that confessional and that priest was like, I know who you are. I know that you've been publicly proclaiming the gospel and that you're a Christian and you messed up. I'm going to tell everybody.
Yeah.
I'm going to shame you. I'm going to send you away. I'm going to make it so that if you even try to come back here, you're going to feel stupid. I'm going to empower the other parishioners to comment on how you've behaved,
Right.
to judge you while you have know nothing about them. So even if they have things to be judged about, you're just absorbing this. Would I ever come back? Would I stay? Would I want to participate in the community? Would I wish good things for the parishioners? And then if this happens, there would be, let's say there's 200 parishioners and 25 of them are with the priest and they're publicly shaming me, and I show back up and those 25 are like, they have their negative things to say and their opinions. Well, I'm going to hate all 200. I'm going to feel judged by all 200. I'm going to feel terrified of these people and remove myself from this community in all the possible love. Like, how would the church continue?
No,
How would
it would fall
any
apart.
organization continue? And then you look at our modern world and you're like, not sustainable, guys.
No,
Right.
and that's why the mercy we say comes from Jesus Christ. It's
Yeah.
not from man.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The priest is the intermediary, and it's his humanity truly being used as an instrument of God's grace. But it's God's grace
Yeah.
that's being
Yeah.
poured out into this. That's why it's not sustainable without
Right.
God.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the
And
thing.
and then of course, you mentioned like if the spirit of the world were to like seep into the church and take over, we'd be destroyed in a month. Well, like the spirit of the world very much can and often sometimes does seep into the world and into
Right.
the church in little ways, right? So like as Christians, part of our responsibility in our own hearts and our own communities is to like make sure that these cultural currents and ways of thinking that we're like swimming in all the time
Right.
are not infecting us too. And it's so easy for it to happen because we are inclined towards sin and
You
fallen.
All right, I want to ask you guys about one thing before we get out of here.
Okay.
Where you're killing it. I was like, oh man, we'll just do it. I'm gonna like be funny. We're gonna get some levity in here. We're just gonna like joke about their lives. We'll talk about their childhoods. We're here like having very serious, emotional. This is great. So recently I was posting about something about being Catholic. Shoot, I don't even know what it was. It was benign. Oh no, I made a meme about the Pope, my favorite Pope,
Sure.
John Paul II, JP2. And so I had a sweatshirt with St. John Paul II on it, and there's a meme going around online with like a popular song that I really like. It's in the metal scene. So I make this meme that is a niche within a niche. I think 200 people will like this. I just like to make things for me sometimes. I make it, it goes viral. Wild, right? But because it's me like just making a joke about the Pope is fun. I like this Pope. The amount of people who came out to attack me for being Catholic again, I got like a recancel thing. A couple hundred messages,
Really?
right?
Dang,
a bunch of stuff, emails, things on every social media, and it kind of, it was, what do the kids say? Triggering. It was like, oh, I remember when I was first came out as Christian, I kind of had a little re-experience. I reoriented myself and felt better, and I'm okay. No harm, no foul. But there was like a couple hours where I was in an airport sort of having a panic attack over it. But a lot of people, their whole thing was, we're not mad at you. You're being a baby. We're mad at the institution. You're serving this institution which has caused this harm. They always like to bring up the scandals in the 80s in America, and so they bring up these things and they're like, we're attacking the institution. My response to that was, I'm a man, I'm not an institution. I hope I cleared that up for everybody, so when you attack me as a human, but their whole thing was, we are valid to attack you because you're serving an institution or promoting an institution that we see as bad because X and Y. How do you respond to these people? How do you respond to someone who says, Shane, you're actually being emotional and a baby. I'm not attacking. I attack you because of the institution. Yeah. You are culpable for this institution as an individual that supports it.
I would say a few things. I just kind of spitballing here, but
one of the
things I would say would be like, no institution is perfect. What are we talking about here?
Right.
You probably grabbed a cup of coffee from an institution this morning that probably supports abortion.
Right.
Or like use a slave labor somewhere.
Yeah, I was going to say abortion might not be the argument, but these people are like,
this crowd.
Good. Yeah.
No, but you get my point though, right?
Yeah, no, I totally get your point.
My point is that like
they're typing on their Apple phone that was the lithium was mined by child slaves in
some
Africa.
little 8-year-old.
Yeah.
That is not getting fed but a bowl of rice or something. And my point being though is so that's the first thing. I think we always have to remember before we talk about the pick in somebody's eye, we got to think about the log in our eye. I think that's what we all as human beings, doesn't matter if you're Christian or not, have to like assess reality in that lens. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I also want to say, and maybe kind of speaking in defense of the church, is the church is easy to attack on this front because the church is actually unified.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, we could say, well, what about that? What about those Protestants, or what about that other organization, or what about that other corporation, or whatever?
Yeah.
The reason that it's hard to attack those companies or those institutions sometimes is because there's not a unified body to that. The church, you can say these people at this time and this place did this, and you can go back and find the files of those men that are structurally guiding whatever you want to say about the scandal, right? But because the church is one.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so you're right. It's not you. Like, you're not facilitating the sin that's happening. It's humanity and its brokenness facilitating these things. It's never Holy Mother Church. Never.
Yeah.
Because Holy Mother Church is wedded to Jesus Christ, the Savior. So unless you're willing to make the jump and blame Jesus Christ himself for these things, then you can't make that jump and say, well, Shane or whoever or us are facilitating these things. That's not necessarily the case, right?
As a secular person, they come back to you and they say, well, I don't think Jesus Christ is real. So I think this is just an organization, and you give them your money and you promote them to other people, and this organization does bad things.
And that's a different conversation.
Right. I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah. To a secular person, I guess my first response would, like to own the fact that the church is corrupt, and like not try to like deny that or hide from that. Like it's full of sinful human beings who throughout history have done sinful things.
Yeah.
I'm being one of them, right? But I guess I would try to get them to see that like the church, people think of the church and they think of like the Vatican, and they think of the cardinals and the bishops, and they think of like this institution,
the super rich gold, everything.
Right. And
Which, what does that even mean? Those guys live in just like houses. They don't have kids or wives. They're not on yachts.
They're all celibates. But
yeah.
So the church has an institutional dimension, right? Like we have a hierarchy, we have authority structures, but the church is like far more than just an institution.
Right.
So the church is also Mother Teresa in the slums of Calcutta, like bathing dying people as they're suffering, right? The church is also like the mother and the father of a family of children who are like loving and serving each other and like doing their best to like be good people every single day and like serve God. So just trying to broaden people's perspective and be like, look, I'm a part of this. Yes, it is an organization, because this is the thing about the church. And I guess if you're talking to someone secular, they're not going to accept these terms, but it's nevertheless true. Like, the church is the mystical body of Christ. Jesus Christ is fully human and fully divine.
Yeah.
And so the church we believe it's divine, that Jesus is present, the Holy Spirit is with us in the church, but that it's also fully human.
Yeah.
Because it's made up of human beings, it has to have institutional structures if it's going to be an organization in this world, in space and time.
Right.
And because human beings are human beings, there's going to be corruption, just like there is in any other institution.
Right.
But I think, and that's when you can get to Deacon Max's point. Like, name me an institution that doesn't have corruption.
No, that is a point I bring up to people, and usually they go, well, it doesn't matter. I'm not involved with any of those institutions. And I could nitpick and be like, no, you definitely are. Like, do you pay taxes, big dog?
Right.
But like,
So
and then now you're in the weeds, and it basically comes down to this point where they just go, well, I just hate the church. It's unnecessary. The government is necessary. They'll just say something like this, but.
And then you just pray for them, man. I think that's part of the answer, right?
At the end of the day.
I know it sounds ridiculous and almost elementary, but truly that is what you can do, because sometimes people's hearts are just so hardened that nothing but hate is motivating those insults and stuff. And so, I just think that's part of the answer. I think it has to be.
These people are also, they don't know what they want. You say... So let's just say, like, I used to be a major person on the left. I had a show where I was a leftist. I'm into leftist theory. I've read a lot. I've done a lot of history and stuff, the USSR, all of it. And so you tell someone like, okay, well, you're a leftist. What about Stalin? What about Mao? These institutions, and then they go, well, I don't care about that, because Stalin, like, for instance, Stalin made it illegal to be gay. And if you're a leftist in America, that's a huge problem, right? And so you go, what about Stalin? You're a leftist. He's a leftist. What you may talking to me about institutions? What about the institution of of communism and it being a whatever? And then they go, okay, well, I'm not involved with him. I'm an anarchist. And then you go, okay, so you're just like an individual with all these other individuals. So they break themselves down until they're removed from any group. But now they're just like an island unto themselves. And what are they going to get done?
Yeah.
What are the fruits of what you've decided to do? So no institution. So now you're just a person who's capable of nothing, uniting with no one, going nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's
and that's not like no one is an island. There's man is an island. Like no one exists as an isolated individual. This is a problem with in America, this is a part of like our cultural fabric that we value individualism, which is a good thing. And like every individual obviously does have dignity, but I think we take it to an extreme, and we value individualism so much that we think that we forget that like to be a person is to exist in relationship to other persons.
Yes.
It's to exist in a family. It's to exist in a community. It's to exist as a part of like social structures. And like there is no abstract like individual reality where I don't exist as a part of those things.
No.
Right. So again, because human beings are human beings, all of those things are going to have flaws.
Yeah.
So,
dude, I can't stop thinking about Devontae's comedy. I have been Devontae's divine comedy, dude.
Medea's divine comedy, dude. Someone make that movie.
Guy comes in Bumbleclad, brother. This comedy, my brother. It's just, I'm sorry, I ruined the moment.
Oh no, it's perfect. I love it. I love it so much. thank you both for coming.
Yeah,
I appreciate you both.
sure.
You're going to be priests this year.
Yeah,
It's
like
happening.
4 more months.
I'm excited to celebrate mass with both of you.
We'll hit it hard, man.
This year, I will make it happen.
Dude.
I don't care where you go. I will fly to find you.
Okay.
If
I
you
am
wanna-
going to Rome this year,
Oh,
so
nice.
if one of you gets sent
When
to
are you
Rome,
going?
I will come get you.
Nice.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm going for my honeymoon. That's our big plan.
Cool.
So hopefully we're
honeymoon.
married before the summer, and then I will be in Rome. I'm also going to pilgrimage to Poland this year.
Nice.
Should be sick. So this is Jubilee year.
Jubilee
we
year,
gotta
baby.
make it happen.
Big time.
Yeah. So I appreciate both of you. Plug your podcast one more time.
Logos Podcast.
Logos Podcast.
And I was on there. Go watch that episode. It's
Yeah.
very good.
It's gonna be good.
I feel like our episode on your podcast was sillier, and this episode was more philosophical.
Isn't that funny?
How
I
fun is
agree with
that?
that.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
go.
awesome.
That's pretty cool.
That's
Well, thanks for hanging out, guys. That's
Yeah,
it.
that's it.
Let's get out of here and go have
been
dinner.
great, Jay.
Yeah.
Let's go.
See you guys.
Did, man. Yeah. Peace.
Great job, guys.
All right, third one. Let's go.
Let's all go.